Here's the part nobody warns you about. Your own child won't scream. She won't curse you out. She won't slam a door or make a scene. She'll smile. She'll sound reasonable. And she'll destroy your life using calm words and a steady voice. Hello, dear listeners. Before I share this story, a deeply personal journey of betrayal and choosing myself, I ask you to support this channel by liking and subscribing. And please, tell me where you're listening from in the comments. Now, let's begin. My name is Mabel. I'm 61 years old, and the last normal day of my life started with my daughter saying, "Mom, don't overthink it." That should have been my first warning. But when you've spent decades putting your kids first, you don't question their tone, you question yourself. It was a Tuesday. Nothing special, no holiday, no drama, just one of those days where the sky looks plain and the air feels heavy for no clear reason. My phone rang around 9 a.m. I was standing in my kitchen, stirring instant oatmeal, barefoot on cold tile. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that creeps up on you once your kids are grown and gone. "Mama," my daughter said, all casual, "what are you doing today?" That alone caught my attention. She never asked that. "Nothing much," I replied, "just home." "Well, that's not happening," she said. "I'm picking you up. We're going out." Out. I felt something warm spread through my chest. Hope. Stupid, stubborn hope. "For what?" I asked. "Lunch, maybe errands. Just us," she said. "You need to get out more." There it was again. You need to. I ignored the sting. "What time?" I asked. "An hour," she said. "Be ready." Then she hung up. No love you, no details. Still, I smiled. That's the messed up part. At 61, after everything I'd lived through, one small scrap of attention from my daughter still had the power to make my whole day feel lighter. I showered longer than usual, put on lotion, dried my hair carefully. I stood in front of the mirror, steadying my face, like I was trying to decide if I still belonged in the world. 61 doesn't feel old inside your bones. It just feels quieter. I chose a soft cardigan and slacks, nothing flashy, just neat, respectable, the kind of outfit that says, "I still matter." When her car pulled up, I grabbed my purse immediately. Didn't want to keep her waiting, didn't want to give her a reason to sigh. She didn't come inside. She stayed in the driver's seat, engine running. That should have been my second warning. "You ready?" she asked through the open window. "Yes," I said, already stepping out. She glanced at me up and down, not cruel, just quick, like she was checking off a box. "You look good," she said. "Not nice, not beautiful, just good." I got in. Her car smelled like new leather and expensive perfume. Her life smelled nothing like mine anymore. She pulled away fast. We drove in silence for a minute. Then she started talking about traffic, about work, about how tired she was, how expensive everything had gotten. I listened. I always listened. That's what mothers do. We absorb. We nod. We make space. Then we passed the diner I loved. Then the cafe she used to beg me to take her to after school. Then every single place that made sense for lunch. My stomach tightened. "Where are we going?" I asked lightly, trying not to sound suspicious. She didn't answer right away. Her jaw clenched. "Mom, can we just get there first?" There it was again. That tone, the one that says, "I've already decided." The road changed, less traffic, more trees, long stretches of nothing. I stared out the window, my reflection faint in the glass. I looked small, older than I felt. Then I saw the sign, big, clean, impossible to miss. Silver Pines Senior Living and Assisted Care. My heart slammed so hard I thought it might crack a rib. I laughed, actually laughed. "Oh, very funny," I said. She slowed the car. "I'm serious," she said. The laughter died in my throat. "You didn't tell me we were coming here. I didn't want you to stress." Stress. That word hit me like a slap. "You tricked me," I whispered. She parked the car and finally turned to face me. "Mom, don't make this into something it's not." "What is it then?" I asked. She sighed, that tired, irritated sigh I'd heard since she was a teenager. "It's a place where you'll be safe." "I am safe." "You live alone." "So do millions of people." "You forget things." "I forget where I put my glasses, not my name." She didn't argue. She opened the door and got out. My hands were shaking. I stayed seated, heart racing, watching her walk to the trunk. When she lifted it, my breath caught. Inside was a suitcase. My suitcase, the blue one from the hall closet, packed neatly. I felt like the ground disappeared under me. "You went into my house," I said slowly. She didn't deny it. "You weren't answering your phone yesterday." "I was napping." "Well, I made a call, like a responsible adult." Responsible. I wanted to scream. I wanted to remind her who raised her, who sacrificed, who skipped dreams so she could chase hers. Instead, my voice cracked. "It's my birthday." She froze for a half second. Then she looked away. "This isn't about that." That's when I knew. This wasn't love. This was convenience. Inside, everything smelled like bleach and air freshener. Too clean, too controlled. Staff members smiled like they were trained to soften bad news. They already knew my name, already had forms, already had her signature. Nobody asked if I agreed. They showed me a room, small bed, one dresser, one chair, beige walls that felt like they'd never heard laughter. "This is temporary," my daughter said. Temporary is a lie people tell when they don't want to say forever. "Are you staying?" I asked. She shook her head. "I can't," she said. "I've got too much going on." I looked at her, really looked at her. She didn't look worried. She looked relieved. She hugged me quickly, a shallow hug, her body already leaning away. "I'll check on you," she said. Then she left. No tears, no hesitation, no turning back. That night, lying in a strange bed, listening to strangers cough and shuffle in the halls, I finally let myself feel it. The betrayal, the shock, the truth. I wasn't confused. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't done. And as the clock crept past midnight, officially ending a day my daughter said, "Don't overthink it," one thought burned through me like fire. She thought this was the end. I knew it was the beginning. The first thing they don't tell you about places like that is this: they take your time away before they take anything else. That first morning at Silver Pines, I woke up to a knock I didn't ask for. Not a gentle knock either. Firm, official, like I owed somebody something. "Good morning, Mabel," a voice chirped from the other side of the door. "Breakfast ends at 8:30. I blinked at the ceiling, confused. 8:30? I hadn't set an alarm in years. I ate when I was hungry, slept when I was tired, lived on my own rhythm like a grown woman who paid her own bills. I swung my legs off the bed and felt the cold floor bite into my feet. The room looked smaller in daylight, less neutral, more temporary, like I wasn't meant to stay long, but everyone knew I would. When I opened the door, a young woman stood there holding a clipboard. Couldn't have been older than my daughter. She smiled too hard. "First day can feel overwhelming," she said. "You'll get used to it." I wanted to tell her I didn't plan on getting used to anything. Instead, I nodded. Breakfast was a long room full of round tables and people who looked like they'd given up arguing with the world. Some stared into space, some muttered to themselves, some ate like they were afraid the food would disappear. I carried my tray and sat alone. The eggs were rubbery. The coffee tasted like regret. I kept waiting for my daughter to call. She didn't. By noon, I told myself she was busy. By evening, I knew better. That night, I asked the nurse if I could step outside for air. She tilted her head like I'd asked for something unreasonable. "Visiting hours are over," she said. "I don't want to visit anyone. I want to breathe." She smiled again. "I'll have to check." She never came back. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just a place. It was a system, and I was already inside it. The second day, they handed me a schedule, printed, laminated, color-coded. Wake-up time, medication time, group activities, lights out. I stared at it like it was written in another language. "I don't take medication," I said. The nurse barely looked up. "Doctor approved it." "What doctor?" She paused. Then, "Your daughter provided the records." That sentence sat heavy in my chest. My daughter had spoken for me, decided for me, signed away pieces of my life like paperwork was nothing. That afternoon, she finally called. Her voice was bright, fake bright. "Hey, Mom, just checking in." I gripped the phone. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. There was a pause, then a sigh. "Because you would have argued." "So instead you lied?" "I did what was best," she snapped. "You don't see how hard this is for me." "For her?" I laughed, sharp, bitter, tired. "I dropped you off and went home to dinner. Don't talk to me about hard." Silence. Then colder now. "You're safe. That's what matters." Before I could respond, she added, "I've got a meeting. I'll call later." She didn't. Days started bleeding together. Same food, same hallway, same faces. They called me sweetie, hun, dear. Nobody called me Mabel unless they were reading my chart. One afternoon, I met a woman named Ruth. She had sharp eyes and a mouth that didn't bother pretending. "First week?" she asked. I nodded. She snorted. "That's what it hurts the most." "Does it stop?" I asked. She shrugged. "You stop fighting it. That's different." That scared me more than anything, because I wasn't ready to stop fighting. On the 5th day, I noticed something strange. My door didn't lock from the inside. I mentioned it to the staff. "Oh, that's for safety," they said. "Safety for who?" That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to footsteps outside my door. Every sound felt closer than it should have been. I thought about my house, my couch, my photos, my quiet. I thought about my daughter sleeping in her bed, convinced she'd done the right thing. That's when something inside me shifted. Not sadness, not fear. Anger. Cold, steady anger. She thought I was done. She thought age meant obedience. She thought love meant control. She was wrong. Very wrong. Because if there's one thing 61 years taught me, it's this: you don't survive a lifetime by being weak. And I wasn't about to start now. By the end of the first week, I stopped crying. Not because it stopped hurting, but because crying took energy, and I needed every bit of mine. That's something nobody tells you about survival. It isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It's quiet, calculated. It's watching instead of reacting. So that's what I did. I watched. I watched who knocked before entering and who didn't. I watched which nurses actually listened and which ones talked over people like they weren't there. I watched which residents got visitors and which ones slowly faded into the background like furniture nobody dusted anymore. I watched the doors. Some locked, some didn't. Some had codes, some had alarms that beeped if you leaned too close. I started noticing patterns. Breakfast staff changed at 10. Night staff got lazy around midnight. Paperwork piled up at the nurse's station like nobody ever finished anything. Systems always have cracks. You just have to stop panicking long enough to see them. I started small. I asked questions, not angry ones, not emotional ones, the kind that sound harmless. What time does the doctor usually come by? Who handles outside appointments? Is there a day family members usually visit? They answered because they underestimated me. That's the thing about getting older. People confuse quiet with clueless. One afternoon, a social worker sat across from me with a practiced smile and a pen poised like she was about to fix my life. "How are you adjusting, Mabel?" she asked. I folded my hands in my lap. "I'm concerned," I said calmly. "There seems to be some misunderstanding about why I'm here." She tilted her head. "Your daughter expressed concerns about your memory." "My memory's fine," I replied. "Ask me anything." She didn't. Instead, she scribbled something down. That's when I realized something else. Truth didn't matter nearly as much as paperwork. That night, I borrowed a phone. Technically, we weren't supposed to share, but rules get blurry when people get lonely. I dialed my daughter, straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I didn't want to beg. I didn't want to explain. I wanted leverage. So I started calling other people. Old friends, distant cousins, people I hadn't spoken to in years but who still remembered who I was before I became a problem to manage. Most didn't answer, but one did. "Hello?" a woman said cautiously. "Linda," I said, "it's Mabel." A pause. "Mabel?" she gasped. "Oh my God, where have you been?" That question almost broke me. "I need help," I said quietly. She didn't hesitate. "Say when." I hung up, shaking, not from fear, but from relief. I wasn't invisible yet. Back at Silver Pines, things got tighter. They moved my medication cup closer to me during meals, started reminding me of bedtime like I was a child. One nurse adjusted my cardigan without asking. That did it. "Please don't touch me," I said, firm. She blinked. "I was just helping." I didn't ask for help. She backed off, surprised. Good. Let them be surprised. Ruth noticed the change. "You're different," she said one afternoon while we sat near the window pretending to watch birds. "I'm awake," I replied. She smiled thinly. "That won't make you popular. I'm not here to be liked." She nodded slowly. Good. Then she leaned closer. "Word of advice?" she whispered. "Keep your voice calm. They're listening for cracks." I looked at her sharply. "How do you know?" She tapped her temple. "Been here longer than I should have been." That night, I didn't sleep. I replayed every conversation, every reaction, every rule. And one thought kept circling my mind like a shark. They needed my compliance more than I needed their care. That was the crack. On the 7th day, I asked for my files. They hesitated. I smiled politely. "I have the right," I said. They couldn't argue. When they handed me the folder, my hands were steady. Inside were notes I'd never agreed with, phrases like "appears confused" and "family reports decline." Family reports. One person. My daughter. I closed the folder slowly. She hadn't just dropped me off, she'd built a case. That night, staring at the ceiling again, I didn't feel helpless. I felt focused, because now I knew the truth. This wasn't about my safety. It was about her comfort. And comfort has a funny way of crumbling once it's challenged. The moment you stop trying to be agreeable, everything changes. People sense it. The air shifts. Smiles tighten. At Silver Pines, being nice was the price of comfort, and the second I stopped paying that price, I became inconvenient. It started with a meeting. They didn't call it that, of course. They never do. They called it a check-in. 3 of them sat across from me in a small office that smelled like stale coffee and printer ink. The social worker, a nurse I didn't recognize, and a man in a button-down shirt who never introduced himself. Power move. "We just want to make sure you're settling in," the social worker said, pen ready. I nodded, calm, collected. "I want to make sure I understand my situation," I replied. The man cleared his throat. "Your daughter is concerned about your independence." "There it is," I said. They blinked. I'm not confused, I'm not dangerous, and I did not consent to long-term placement. The nurse shifted uncomfortably. The man leaned back. "Your daughter has legal authority." That word hit like a punch. "Authority?" I asked quietly. "Over what exactly?" He hesitated. "Good. Did I sign anything?" I asked. "No," he admitted. "Then I'd like to leave." Silence. The kind that tells you you've hit something important. "That's complicated," the social worker said. "No," I replied. "It's actually very simple." I folded my hands and waited. They ended the meeting early. After that, things got colder. Staff spoke less, watched more. Doors took longer to open. Requests took longer to process. That's how institutions punish you, not with force, but with delay. Ruth noticed. "You rattled them," she said, smirking. "Good." She leaned in. "Careful, that's when they push back." She was right. 2 days later, my daughter showed up. No warning, no call. She walked into the common room like she owned the place. Hair perfect, purse expensive, eyes already scanning for staff approval. She hugged me like a performance. "You look okay," she said. I pulled back. "Why am I here?" She sighed loudly. "Can we not do this here?" "This is the only place you've given me," I said. She glanced around, embarrassed, lowered her voice. "You're being difficult." I laughed, not loud, just enough to tease. "You kidnapped me," I said, "and I'm difficult?" Her eyes flashed. "I did what I had to do." "For who?" She froze. "For you," she said finally. I shook my head. "No, for you." Her mouth tightened. "You don't understand how much pressure I'm under," she snapped. "I have kids, a job. I can't be worrying about you all the time." There it was, the truth finally breathing air. "I never asked you to," I said. "I raised you alone, I figured it out, and I would have figured this out too, if you'd let me." She stood up abruptly. "You should be grateful. Some people don't get this level of care." Care, that word again. She left without saying goodbye. This time, I didn't cry. That night, Linda visited. My friend Linda, the one who remembered me. She walked in carrying my purse. My real purse. "I went to your house," she whispered once we were alone. "Everything's still there." I squeezed her hand. "Did you find the papers?" I asked. She nodded. "In the filing cabinet, just like you said." Relief flooded my chest. Proof. That's what systems fear the most. The next morning, I requested another meeting. This time, I brought notes, dates, quotes, copies. I wasn't emotional, I wasn't loud, I was prepared. I am requesting a reassessment, I said, with an independent evaluator. They exchanged looks. And if that's denied, asked the man, then my attorney will be in touch. I didn't have an attorney, but they didn't know that. Fear is a powerful motivator. Word travels fast in places like Silver Pines. Suddenly, staff were polite again, very polite. Doors opened faster, questions were answered. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was a problem, and problems get addressed. That night, Ruth raised her plastic cup toward me. "Looks like you're stirring the pot," she said. I clinked her cups against hers. "About time," I replied, because the truth was simple. I wasn't trapped. I was waking up, and my daughter was about to learn that control doesn't last forever. If you've never been quietly labeled a problem, let me explain how it feels. Nobody confronts you directly. Nobody says, "We're watching you." Instead, the tone changes. Smiles get thinner. Voices get softer. Rules get enforced only on you. By the second week, I could feel it in my bones. Silver Pines wasn't just a building, it was a machine, and machines don't like friction. I had become friction. It started with my mail. Every morning, a small pile of envelopes appeared on the counter by the nurse's station. Bills, junk, occasional cards from churches I barely remembered joining. Mine stopped showing up. 3 days in a row. On the 4th day, I asked. "Oh," the nurse said casually, flipping through a stack. "Sometimes it's delayed." "Where?" I asked. She avoided my eyes. That's when I knew. I wasn't paranoid. I was being managed. That afternoon, Linda came back. This time, she didn't smile when she saw me. "They changed the locks," she whispered as we sat near the window. My chest tightened. "To my house?" She nodded. "New deadbolt. Someone's been there recently." My daughter. Of course. I felt that old familiar ache, the one that comes from realizing your own child thinks she knows what's best for your entire existence. "She can't do that," I said. Linda hesitated. "Mabel, did you ever sign a power of attorney?" "No," I said immediately. "Never." She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. "Then explain this." Inside was a copy of a document I had never seen before. My name, my signature, and a date I remembered all too well. The day I'd gone to the hospital for dehydration last year. The day my daughter had helped with paperwork. My hands started shaking. "That's not my signature," I whispered. Linda nodded. "That's what I thought. Forgery, plain and simple, and suddenly everything made sense." That night I couldn't sleep, not because of fear, because of clarity. My daughter hadn't panicked, she hadn't acted impulsively, she had planned this. The slow distancing, the concerned phone calls, the paper trail. She didn't want to care for me. She wanted control without responsibility, and she'd used my own trust as the weapon. The next morning, I requested to speak to administration again. This time, they didn't rush to schedule it. 2 days passed, then 3. That's another trick institutions use. Exhaustion. They hope you get tired, confused, compliant. They didn't understand who they were dealing with. On the 4th day, I walked straight into the office. "I'm requesting a copy of every document you have with my name on it," I said calmly. The receptionist blinked. "I'll need approval. You have until end of day, or my next call is to Adult Protective Services." That did it. When they finally handed me the file, it was thicker than I expected. Reports, notes, assessments, and over the same phrase, according to daughter. I sat there, flipping pages, feeling something shift deep inside me. This wasn't about my health. This was about a narrative, and narratives can be dismantled. That evening, Ruth sat beside me during dinner. "You look like someone who just found the exit," she said. "I found the lie," I replied. She nodded slowly. "Same thing." I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. Then she leaned in close and said something that chilled me. "You're not the first mother this has happened to." I swallowed. "How many?" She said, "Enough. Most don't fight." I thought of the quiet residents, the ones with no visitors, no questions. I felt sick. The next day, my daughter showed up again. This time, she didn't pretend. Her voice was sharp the moment we were alone. "What are you doing?" she hissed. "Reading," I said. "Learning." She crossed her arms. "You're embarrassing me." That word again. "You forged my signature." Her face drained of color, then hardened. "I did what was necessary." "You committed a crime." She laughed, nervous, defensive. "No one's going to believe you." I met her eyes. "You sure about that?" For the first time since this started, she looked unsure. I leaned closer. "I raised you," I said, "which means I know exactly how far you're willing to go and where you get sloppy." She stood up abruptly. "This is for your own good," she snapped. "No," I replied. "This is for your convenience, and I'm done paying that price." She left furious. I sat there shaking, not with fear, but with adrenaline, because now she knew I wasn't backing down. That night, Linda made another call, this one to a lawyer she trusted. He agreed to meet, quietly, off the books for now. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, heart pounding, mind racing. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for every woman in that building who'd been silenced with paperwork and smiles. And somewhere deep inside me, something fierce woke up. Not anger, not revenge, justice. Once lawyers entered the room, the air changes. It gets colder, sharper, less forgiving. Up until that point, everyone at Silver Pines had been speaking in soft voices and careful words, like if they whispered long enough, the truth would stay asleep. It didn't. The attorney Linda found was named Harold, and he looked exactly like you'd expect. Gray hair, tired eyes, and the kind of calm that only comes from seeing every version of human betrayal. He met me in a small conference room just off the lobby. No clipboard, no smile, just a yellow legal pad and a pen that clicked slowly between his fingers. "Mrs. Mabel," he said, "tell me everything. Start wherever you want." So I did. I told him about the lunch that wasn't lunch, the suitcase in the trunk, the forged signature, the way my daughter used the word care like a shield. I told him about the schedule, the locked doors, the way my mail disappeared. I talked for almost 2 hours. He didn't interrupt once. When I finally stopped, my throat was dry and my hands were shaking. He leaned back and exhaled. "Well," he said slowly, "this is messy." I braced myself. "But," he added, "it's also very clear." That word hit me harder than I expected. Clear. Not confused, not questionable, not emotional. Clear. The first thing he explained to me was this. Facilities like Silver Pines don't want court. Court means exposure. Exposure means audits. Audits mean consequences. They rely on silence, Harold said, and family cooperation. "My daughter cooperated just fine," I replied bitterly. "Yes," he said, "until you didn't." That was the turning point. Not the forgery, not the paperwork. Me. Within 48 hours of Harold sending his first letter, things shifted. Staff started calling me Mrs. Mabel instead of Sweetie. Doors opened without questions. I suddenly had approved outside calls. Funny how fast dignity returns when lawyers get involved. One nurse even apologized. "I didn't know," she whispered. That phrase echoed in my head. I didn't know. That's how systems survive, not by monsters, but by people who look away. My daughter called that night. This time, her voice wasn't sharp. It was shaky. "You're really doing this?" she asked. "I'm protecting myself," I replied. "You're making me look like a villain." I closed my eyes. "You did that yourself." She started crying, real crying this time, not performative. "I was scared. I thought if I didn't act fast, something bad would happen." "So you decided something bad should happen to me instead?" I asked quietly. She didn't answer. We sat in silence for a long moment. "I trusted you," I said finally. "I know," she whispered. That was the saddest part. She knew. Meanwhile, rumors spread through Silver Pines. Residents whispered, staff avoided eye contact, administration scheduled meetings they'd postponed for weeks. Ruth squeezed my hand one afternoon. "You've got them nervous," she said. "I like it." But not everyone did. A woman down the hall stopped speaking to me altogether. Another muttered that I was asking for trouble. That's the price of standing up. Not everyone wants freedom. Some just want routine. Harold came back with copies of handwriting analyses, experts, professional opinions. They all said the same thing. The signature wasn't mine. Forgery wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a crime. "This puts your daughter in a bad spot," Harold said gently. I nodded. She put herself there. He studied me for a moment. "Are you prepared for what comes next?" I swallowed, because what came next wasn't just paperwork, it was fallout. The facility requested mediation. That's code for "please don't sue us." They offered reassessment, temporary release, outside evaluation, all things I should have been offered from the start. I agreed, not because I trusted them, but because I wanted my freedom documented. The evaluation took 6 hours, memory tests, logic puzzles, conversations. I passed, every single one. The evaluator smiled at the end. "You're sharp, angry, but sharp." I smiled back. I've earned both. That night, alone in my room, I finally broke. Not loud, not messy, just quiet tears into a pillow that didn't smell like home. Because even when you win, you lose something. I'd lost the illusion that my daughter would always protect me. I'd lost the comfort of blind trust, and that kind of loss doesn't heal fast. 2 days later, Harold sat across from me again. "He can't hold you," he said. "Not legally, not anymore." My chest tightened. "I can leave?" I asked. "Yes." The word echoed. Leave. I thought of my house, the changed locks, the silence. I thought of my daughter pacing somewhere, realizing control is slipping through her fingers. I nodded slowly. "Yes," I said. "I'm ready." But even as I said it, I knew walking out wouldn't be the end. It would be the beginning of something harder. Because freedom is one thing, reckoning is another. Leaving Silver Pines didn't feel like freedom. It felt like stepping into open air after being underwater too long, dizzy, unsteady, lungs burning. The doors slid open automatically, polite as ever, and suddenly I was outside. No alarm, no goodbye speech, no apology from the people who'd signed off on keeping me locked away. Just sunlight and a parking lot full of cars that belonged to other people's lives. Harold stood beside me, holding a folder thick enough to choke a printer. "You're officially discharged," he said. "On record, clean." I nodded, but my hands were shaking too much to celebrate. Because freedom doesn't erase fear, it just gives it room to stretch. I didn't go home, not yet. That house wasn't mine anymore, not really. My daughter had changed the locks months earlier for safety, installed cameras just in case, redirected mail to help me stay organized. Funny how control always dresses itself up as concern. Harold arranged for me to stay at a small extended stay motel near the courthouse. Nothing fancy. Beige walls, scratchy bedspread, a coffee maker that hissed like it hated its job. But it was mine. For the first time in months, every inch of space belonged to me. I slept with the lights on that first night, old habit from Silver Pines. The next morning, I woke up to 12 missed calls, all from my daughter. She'd never called me that many times in her life, not when my husband died, not when I had surgery, not when I begged her to visit. Now suddenly she couldn't stop. I stared at the phone for a long time before answering. "What?" I said. There was a pause. Then her voice came through, tight and brittle. "Where are you?" I smiled, but she couldn't see it. "Safe," I said, "lucid, free. You can't just disappear," she snapped. "Oh," I replied calmly, "that's funny. You didn't seem to have a problem with it when you were the one doing it to me." Silence. Then breathing, heavy, angry. "We need to talk," she said. "I agree." We met at a diner halfway between the facility and my old house, neutral ground, the kind of place where nobody stays too long and nobody asks questions. She was already there when I arrived, sitting stiff in a booth, scrolling her phone like it might rescue her. She looked older than I remembered. Not wiser, just tired. I slid into the booth across from her. She didn't hug me, didn't ask how I was. She jumped straight in. "You embarrassed me," she said. That's when I knew. Not "I'm sorry," not "I was wrong," not "Are you okay?" Embarrassed. "You lost control," she continued. "Do you know how that looks?" I stared at her. "This isn't about how it looks," I said quietly. "This is about what you did." She rolled her eyes. "I did what I thought was best." "For who?" I asked. She hesitated, then said it. "For everyone." That lie landed heavy between us. I leaned forward. "Say it," I told her. "Say what?" "Say that you were scared I'd cut you off. Say you were scared I'd change my will. Say you were scared I'd finally see you clearly." Her jaw tightened. "That's not fair." I laughed, short, sharp. "You locked me away. Fair left the room a long time ago." Her eyes filled with tears. Real ones. But tears don't erase consequences. "I was overwhelmed," she whispered. "I didn't know what else to do." "You didn't try anything else. You skipped straight to erasing me." The waitress came by. Neither of us ordered food. She left us with coffee we didn't touch. My daughter reached into her purse and pulled out papers, guardianship forms, updated, prepared. "I just need you to sign these, then we can fix this." That was it, the final straw. I stood up so fast the booth rattled. "You don't get to fix what you broke, and you sure as hell don't get my signature ever again." People were staring now. Good. Let 'em. "You're making a mistake," she hissed. "No," I said. "I'm correcting one." I walked out. Didn't look back. That night, alone in the motel room, the weight finally hit me. Not the legal stuff, not the fear, the grief. Because no matter how cruel she'd been, she was still my daughter. I remembered teaching her to tie her shoes, helping with science projects, holding her hair back when she was sick. And now, here we are, sitting across from each other like enemies negotiating a ceasefire. I cried harder that night than I had in years, not because I wanted her back, but because I finally accepted I never really had her. The next day, Harold called. "She filed an emergency motion," he said. "She's pushing hard." I expected that. Control doesn't surrender quietly. She's also telling people you're being manipulated, friends, family, church folks. I exhaled slowly. Let her, I said, because something had shifted. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was done being quiet. I recorded a video that afternoon. Nothing dramatic, no tears, just me sitting at a small desk looking straight into the camera. My name is Mabel. I'm 61 years old, I'm of sound mind, and I'm speaking because silence almost cost me my life. I didn't post it yet, but it was ready. Insurance. Truth waits patiently. That evening, I walked alone for the first time in months. No escort, no schedule, no permission, just me and the sidewalk. I felt stronger with every step. Not healed, not whole, but awake. And I knew, deep down, the storm wasn't over. My daughter wouldn't stop, not until she was exposed, and I wasn't done telling my story. The funny thing about truth is this: it doesn't rush. It waits, and when it finally stands up, it doesn't ask permission. I didn't post the video right away. I sat with it for 2 days, watched it 3 times, listened to my own voice, steady, calm, nothing like the version my daughter was describing to the world. I looked sane, clear, present, which scared her more than any breakdown ever could, because hysteria can be dismissed. Clarity can't. Harold called on a Thursday morning. His voice was clipped. "They're pushing for an emergency hearing," he said. "She's claiming you're being financially exploited." I laughed, a deep, tired laugh. "By who?" I asked. "She hasn't named anyone," he replied. "That's intentional. It plants doubt without proof." That's when it hit me. She wasn't trying to win. She was trying to exhaust me, confuse the court, wear me down, make me look erratic through sheer repetition. Classic control tactic. And it might have worked if I was still the woman who apologized for existing, but I wasn't. That afternoon, I went back to my old house, the one she said wasn't safe anymore. I stood across the street and looked at it like it belonged to someone else. New door locks, motion cameras, her car in the driveway. She was inside, living my life. I didn't knock. I didn't need to, because I wasn't there to reclaim the house. I was there to reclaim my name. The first public crack came from somewhere I didn't expect. Church. An older woman named Denise, someone I'd known for 20 years, posted online. I don't know what's going on with Mabel, but I know her, and this story doesn't add up. That was it. One sentence. But it opened the door. People started asking questions. Why was Mabel locked away so quickly? Why didn't anyone hear her side? Why did the daughter control everything? Curiosity spreads faster than truth, but once it starts, it doesn't stop. That night, I posted the video. No captions, no hashtags, just the clip. My name is Mabel. I'm 61 years old. I went to bed immediately after, didn't watch the numbers, didn't refresh the page, because I already knew. Once the truth is out, it doesn't come back. By morning, everything had changed. Messages flooded in. Friends, former coworkers, people I hadn't spoken to in years. I always wondered. She never let you talk. I'm proud of you. Even strangers, especially strangers, because strangers don't owe anyone loyalty. They only respond to honesty. My daughter called. Again. I didn't answer. She texted, then emailed, then showed up at the motel. I didn't open the door. I stood behind it, listening as she cried and yelled and begged. "You're ruining everything," she shouted. No, she'd already done that. I just stopped cleaning it up. Harold met me later that day with a stack of printed screenshots. "She's panicking," he said. "That's good. Panicked people make mistakes." She'd posted vague emotional updates online, talking about heartbreak, about being betrayed by someone I loved, never naming me, but everyone knew. And this time, they weren't buying it. Then came the anonymous tip. Someone contacted Harold's office, a former friend of my daughter's. She provided screenshots, messages, proof that my daughter had been planning the guardianship months in advance, strategizing. Once it's done, she won't fight back. She'll be too confused. I'll handle the money. That last line made my hands shake, not with fear, with clarity. Harold looked at me carefully. "This changes things," he said. "How?" I asked. "This turns a family dispute into a pattern of intent." Intent. That's a dangerous word for the person who thought no one was watching. The emergency hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. This time, I walked in prepared. Not defensive, prepared. I wore a navy blazer, flat shoes, no makeup, nothing that screamed fragile or angry, just steady. My daughter sat across the room. She wouldn't look at me. Not because she was ashamed, because shame requires reflection. She was afraid. Her attorney spoke first, used the same words, concerned, confused, vulnerable. Then Harold stood, and everything changed. He presented the messages, the timeline, the medical evaluations, the video. The judge leaned forward and asked one question. Why was Miss Mabel never given independent counsel before being placed? Silence. That silence was loud. When it was my turn, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just spoke. I wasn't sick. I was inconvenient. I looked directly at my daughter. You didn't want to help me. You wanted to manage me. The judge dismissed the emergency motion immediately. No hesitation. Outside the courtroom, reporters waited. I almost walked past them. Almost. Then I stopped, because silence had already taken enough from me. "I'm not confused," I said into the microphones. "I'm awake." That quote ran everywhere. That night, alone again, I felt something new. Not rage, not grief, resolve. Because now it wasn't just about me. It was about every parent silenced by their own child, every older woman erased under the word care. And I wasn't done yet. People think justice comes with fireworks, a big speech, a public apology, someone breaking down in tears. That's not how it usually happens. Most of the time, justice arrives quietly, when the person who hurt you realizes their control no longer works. After the hearing, my daughter disappeared. No posts, no messages, no dramatic updates about betrayal or pain. Silence. And for the first time, that silence wasn't protecting her, it was exposing her. Harold warned me not to relax. "She's cornered," he said. "Cornered people get reckless." He was right. A week later, she filed again, this time not for guardianship, but for reimbursement. She claimed I owed her money for caregiving, for managing my finances, for emotional labor. I stared at the paperwork in disbelief. Emotional labor? I paid her rent for years, covered her utilities, bought her groceries when she was between jobs, and now she wanted to invoice me for love. That's when something inside me finally snapped loose. Not anger, expectation. I stopped expecting her to be a daughter. We prepared for trial, a real one. Depositions, financial records, bank statements. Every receipt told the same story. Money flowed one direction, mine to hers. Always mine to hers. During her deposition, she cried. A lot. Talked about stress, about responsibility, about being forced to grow up early. She painted herself as the parent, me as the child. But then Harold asked one simple question. If you believed your mother was incapable, why did you use her funds for personal expenses? She froze. That pause, that was the sound of a story collapsing. I listened from another room, didn't interrupt, didn't correct. I didn't need to. The truth has a way of surfacing when lies get tired. At night, alone in the motel, memories crept in. Her as a little girl, missing teeth, scraped knees, sleeping on my chest during thunderstorms. I let myself feel it, the love, the grief. Because healing doesn't come from pretending it didn't hurt. It comes from facing it without going back. Friends urged me to confront her. "Don't you want closure?" they asked. I thought about that word, closure. What they really meant was forgiveness, a tidy ending. But real life isn't tidy, and forgiveness without accountability is just permission. I didn't need her apology. I needed my life back. The trial date was set for early spring. By then, the narrative had fully shifted. People weren't asking what was wrong with me anymore. They were asking what happened to her. Former friends of hers reached out privately, sharing stories, patterns, manipulation, control. I wasn't special. I was just the last one who stopped complying. On the morning of the trial, I sat in the courtroom early, hands folded, breathing steady. I wasn't nervous. I was done being afraid. When my daughter walked in, she looked smaller, not physically, energetically, like someone whose script had been taken away. She glanced at me. I met her eyes, not with anger, with finality. Her attorney argued that she'd sacrificed years caring for me. Harold countered with evidence, independent evaluations, witness statements, financial records. Every receipt told the same story. Money flowed one direction, mine to hers. Always mine to hers. The judge listened, didn't interrupt, didn't rush. That's when I knew this wasn't going her way. When it was my turn to speak, I stood. My knees shook for half a second, then they steadied. I loved my daughter, I said, enough to ignore my own needs. I paused, and that was my mistake. The courtroom was silent. I am not here to punish her. I'm here to reclaim myself. The ruling came a week later. Her claims were denied, formally, permanently. The court issued a written finding stating there was no evidence of incapacity, no need for oversight, no need for supervision, just freedom. She didn't call after that, didn't text, didn't show up. I think that hurt more than anything because it confirmed what I'd finally accepted. She didn't want reconciliation, she wanted control, and without it, she had nothing to say. I moved into a small apartment near the park. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. I chose the furniture, the curtains, the quiet. Every choice felt like a rebellion. One evening, sitting by the window, I realized something surprising. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't waiting. I wasn't hoping she'd change. I was living, and that was enough. But the story wasn't finished yet, because there was one final thing I needed to do. Not for her, for me, and for every woman who would hear this story and realize she wasn't alone. Freedom doesn't arrive with applause. It arrives quietly, on an ordinary morning when you wake up and realize no one is watching you anymore. No one's checking your phone. No one's correcting your tone. No one's managing your life. Just you. And for the first time in a long while, that felt unfamiliar. I woke up in my new apartment to the sound of birds. Not traffic, not arguing, not the hum of anxiety in my chest. Birds. I lay there for a minute, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the old feeling to hit me. The guilt, the fear, the instinct to reach for my phone and explain myself. It never came. That's when I understood something important. Healing doesn't always feel like relief. Sometimes it feels like quiet confusion because chaos had become normal. I spent that morning unpacking slowly, not rushing, not multitasking. Every item I placed felt intentional. A mug I liked, a photo I chose, a chair positioned exactly where I wanted it. For years, every choice I made had to pass through someone else's approval. Now, even small decisions felt powerful. That's how control works. It shrinks your world until freedom feels overwhelming. People kept asking if I missed her, my daughter. I always paused before answering, because the truth wasn't simple. I missed who I thought she was. I missed the version of her that felt safe. I missed the idea of family. But I didn't miss the fear. I didn't miss walking on eggshells. I didn't miss shrinking myself so she could feel bigger. Love should never require self-erasure. A letter arrived one afternoon. Her handwriting. I recognized it immediately. My hands didn't shake this time. I opened it calmly. She wrote about pain, about misunderstanding, about how things got out of hand. She didn't apologize. Not really. She asked if we could start fresh. That phrase stopped me cold. Start fresh, as if nothing had happened, as if I hadn't been erased, silenced, legally restrained, as if trust grows back overnight. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer, not as punishment, as a boundary. That night, I took a walk through the park, watched couples pass, children playing, older women laughing on benches. I realized something that made me smile. I wasn't behind. I wasn't late. I wasn't broken. I was just beginning again, at 61, and that was okay. I started telling my story, not loudly, not angrily, just honestly. At first, it was small, conversations with friends, support groups, women who whispered, "That happened to me too." Then it grew, messages from strangers, parents afraid to speak, daughters questioning their own behavior, people realizing love shouldn't feel like control. My story wasn't unique, and that made it powerful. One woman said something that stayed with me. "I thought I was crazy until I heard you." That's when I understood why this had happened, not because I deserved it, but because I survived it. And survival, when spoken out loud, becomes permission. I didn't block my daughter. I didn't erase her. I simply stopped chasing closure, because closure doesn't come from someone else admitting they were wrong. It comes from deciding you don't need them to. I forgave myself instead, for staying too long, for giving too much, for confusing sacrifice with love. That forgiveness changed everything. Some nights I still think about her, wonder where she is, hope she learns. But hope no longer controls my choices. I don't need to be understood by the person who refused to see me. I need to be whole. If you're listening to this and wondering whether it's too late for you, let me say this clearly. It is not too late. Not at 40, not at 60, not ever. You don't lose your worth because someone else misused your love. You don't owe access to anyone who harms your peace. And choosing yourself is not selfish, it's survival. And for the first time in my life, I belong to myself. That's not the end of my story. It's the beginning.